So, our next department is Philadelphia Parks and Recreation. And she brought her fan club with her, I can see. First? Okay. Commissioner, how are you? And before you start, because I'll forget with my age making me forget a whole lot of things, and I forgot to say it last time, I see Barry Bessler in the back there, and I just wanted to make a specific mention of him, because he is the guy that we have gone to for years and has always been very helpful, and I think he's close to, is he close to retirement? Or?
Councilman, he insisted that I not mention it, but I'm glad you did.
Oh, really? Okay, well, he can't tell me what to do,
no,
so
I'm
going to mention it.
No, he cannot.
How about that?
He shouldn't be able to tell me what to do either, but he does.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Councilman Greenlee and members of council. My name is Catherine Ott-Lovell. I'm the Commissioner for the Parks and Recreation Department. With me today are Perna Palantino, Deputy Commissioner for Capital Infrastructure and Natural Lands, and Marissa Washington, Deputy Commissioner for Administration. It's our pleasure to be here today. I appear before you to present our proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2020, which includes a general fund obligation of $67,858,055 and grants revenue of $13,552,824. The FY20 general fund budget reflects an increase of $659,342 over FY19 estimated obligations. The Class 100 request of $52,490,935 sustains the department's authorized level of 759 general fund full-time positions. $10,115,490 is proposed for Class 200 and $2,740,630 in Class 3/400 and $2,511,000 in Class 500. The men and women serving Philadelphia Parks and Recreation represent various backgrounds and diversities. Our staff is 42% African American, 4% Latino, 1% Asian, and 52% Caucasian. It is also 27% women and 73% men. I'd like to take a moment to thank the staff of Philadelphia Parks and Recreation, many of whom are here with us today, for their extraordinary dedication to the department, our programs and assets, and the constituents we serve each day. In FY20, we will continue implementing the goals outlined in the department's strategic plan, which will ultimately deliver enriching experiences at playgrounds, rec centers, and parks. We plan to continue to enhance our program quality, offer trainings to recreation staff and service delivery, solidify internal practices, improve asset management, and incentivize staff to create innovative programming that is relevant, inclusive, diverse, and equitable. In a recent effort with the Office of Human Resources, we dramatically improved the department's recruitment and hiring process for recreation leader trainees, an entry-level position that begins an individual's career pipeline within the department. And we are hopeful that this new process will help bring in an energized, highly qualified, and committed cohort of new recreation leaders that truly reflect the diversity of our city. We are excited to report on some great achievements over the past fiscal year, all of which we plan to build on and expand in FY20. During the summer months, Parks and Recreation operated 72 pools for more than 740,000 visitors. We distributed 1.5 million meals, of which 950,000 were served at 389 Play Street sites. Program staff operated 144 summer camps, serving over 7,200 children, and hired 1,000 teens to help provide these and other services. Other summer accomplishments included doubling the number of youth served through our Play Philly program, which is an initiative to promote 1 hour of structured physical activity into the camp program each day, and the continued growth of our Camp Philly program, which is a partnership with the YMCA to give Philadelphia children a sleepaway camp experience in the Pocono Mountains. Since the beginning of the school year, Parks and Recreation increased the number of after-school programs to 95, a 10% increase over the preceding 2 years. Parks and Recreation also expanded food service by about 10,000 meals during days when the school district is closed. In addition, through a partnership with the Mayor's Office of Education, we are also happy to share that our summer camps will start 2 weeks early this summer to accommodate the school district's academic calendar. Our urban forestry group continued to address the city's current backlog of pruning, removal, and planting requests. In FY19, staff oversaw the pruning of over 6,000 trees, the removal of 1,000 street trees, and the planting of 926 street trees. Our crews also removed an additional 3,600 park trees and pruned over 3,000 park trees. The Tree Philly program completed its 15th yard tree giveaway program in FY19, bringing the total number of trees given away to over 23,000. Tree Philly also secured a $1.1 million grant from TD Bank to continue and grow this initiative. Through our Park Stewardship Unit, 115 registered Park Friends Group hosted 421 community events in FY19. These included free concerts, health fairs, holiday celebrations, and movie nights. In addition to supporting the Park Friends Network, the Stewardship Unit coordinated Love Your Park Week in the spring and the fall Love Your Park Service Day, both which engaged a combined 4,300 volunteers through 200 service events. The third year of the Philadelphia International Unity Cup, which is the city's annual World Cup-style tournament, saw attendance top 14,000 people at 104 games, 1,200 players and 120 coaches from 52 teams representing immigrant communities from many countries in this year's Cup. Also last summer, the Dell Music Center hosted 16 events attracting 65,000 guests. Significant projects completed by our capital projects team in FY19 include the renovation of Stenton Park, including a new recreation center, playground, and landscaping, the renovation of Voncom Playground, the new playground at Finley Recreation Center, the new ball field at Gorgas Park, a new pool at Bridesburg Recreation Center, and a new trail and boardwalk at the Fairmount Waterworks. We completed these projects and many, many more. And we celebrated these projects and many, many more by hosting over 50 ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings over the past year. Our skilled trades team completed over 4,600 work orders in FY19. Our special capital projects team worked on 24 projects, creating a savings for the city of $1.5 million. These projects included roof repairs, bathroom repairs, heating and cooling system repairs and upgrades, painting, park lighting, sewer lines, and the replacement of large heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. Lastly, we continue to coordinate very closely with the entire rebuild team around capital projects and community engagement efforts for rebuild sites. I want to thank the Parks and Recreation Commission members, many of whom are with us today, and also the members of the Advisory Councils and Park Friends Group, without whom we could not do the work we do each day. I also want to thank each of you for your tireless efforts on behalf of your constituents and your care and concern and support for the parks and recreation facilities in your district and throughout the city. Should any council member wish to engage in further discussion of any of these matters, my staff and I are available to meet with you at your convenience. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss our department with you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Had a couple of questions. First round. First, how are you? How you all doing? You good?
What's that?
Everything good?
Everything's fine, thank you.
All right. Okay. This came up before, and it may, I don't know what point we'll have to address it in a significant way. So with the expansion and continuation of rebuild as it relates to facilities in some instances, I guess in some cases we'll actually need additional staff from the operating side of the budget. You know, the rebuild project was clearly focused on capital side, in some instances expanding facilities, maybe even building some new facilities. What's the strategy for increasing our staffing levels at the facilities over the next 2, 3, 4 years as we move forward?
Sure. It's certainly something we've given much thought to. And what we're in the process of doing as part of our strategic plan is looking at a comprehensive realignment of our existing staff, looking at sites where we can assign staff to work multiple sites as a chance to open some new sites and to deploy people at different places throughout the week. It is a strategy that we haven't attempted before that we're looking forward to attempting in the near-term future. We have more recreation centers than any city in the country. We have 150, and to give you an example, New York City has 50 recreation centers. So we staff those facilities, but we have additional facilities that are unstaffed. For instance, Winchester Playground in your district.
Right.
And so The city ebbs and flows, and the neighborhoods ebb and flow in terms of needs and program desires. And so I think we have to, as a department, become more in tune with that, working with communities to better understand where those needs are, and making sure that the programs we're providing in those facilities are truly relevant to those communities and that those needs are being filled. So I'm very confident that in working with the administration into the future, that as we present those needs for perhaps expansion of certain centers, that we'll be able to have some good conversations about how to make that happen, in addition to the realignment that we're planning.
All right, and a part of that conversation, actually over the last couple of years, the issue with respects to civil service qualifications for facilities. As you know, the simple reality is, in some instances, we actually have volunteers or heads of advisory groups that do more work than the direct leader. I'm just calling it like it is, you know, and they don't get compensated. And there's always been this conversation, why can't this person who's been here forever, you know, get on staff and be compensated for all the great work? And I know maybe over the last couple of years, there's been a conversation about possibly changing some of the civil service regs to accommodate new categories of employees that could actually be people from the community.
Yeah, so thank you for asking about that.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that we've seen. So our first line of, our first effort is, you know, when we see individuals who are volunteering in our centers and are looking for employment. For example, at Winchester Playground in your district, there's a gentleman there who has been a volunteer working for that facility incredibly hard for probably 15 years. Right. So we're in the process of bringing him on as a seasonal employee, and so that's our first line. We can offer seasonal positions, and our seasonal positions, about 1,400 of them, are filled by people directly from the community. And I'm thrilled that the administration is working those wages up to a living wage so that, you know, those folks are receiving pay increases, some of them for the first time in 20 years that they've been working with us, you know, will go up as high as $15 in the near-term future. But we've also worked really hard, and we, as I mentioned in my testimony, recently did a project with the Office of Human Resources where, you know, our rec leader trainee test only comes up every 2 years, right? And so there was an effort, a big effort on the department's part to try and broaden that pool of applicants as much as we possibly could within the civil service regulations. So the first thing we did was to change the spec for the rec leader trainee position. And what we did is we broadened the type of degrees. We kept that you do have to have a college degree, but we broadened the type of degree that you need for the position so that we could capture more individuals. And we also, there was a certain level of experience that you needed, and we broadened that as well. And then what we did is we also changed the type of test that we offer for that position to hopefully be much more inclusive and fair in terms of bringing in that pipeline of individuals, because those individuals that start as rec leader trainees are the future of the department. You know, you have to start out as a rec leader trainee to someday make it up to district manager, right? It's a pipeline that you have to make your way up. The other way that we're doing it is through our CAP program, and that is a community apprenticeship program that we started about 1.5 years ago. And that program is specifically for people who have been in our seasonal pool that are looking for full-time employment but haven't been able to find, you know, have had trouble accessing the type of jobs that they're looking for. We've also partnered with other programs like Power Corps, Mural Arts Guild program, and other programs to identify folks that are coming out of adjudication or, you know, have you know, just not being able to find the right path. And so we have individuals who have come through that program. Many of them have found full-time employment, some in the city, some outside the city, and then we received an increase in our budget this year to bring 9 of those employees on into full-time positions. And we've actually been working with the Office of Human Resources to change the spec for those positions, some of those entry-level positions, so that these candidates in the CAP program receive that, really we're tailoring the positions to those individuals' experience so that they will be almost guaranteed a job, a civil service job, when they come out of that program. Right. And we received our budget increase to be able to do that.
Okay, at what point do you think you will have concluded the specification revamp /
So we did that for we already did that for the rec leader trainee position.
Sorry, me?
We already did that for the rec leader trainee position. We updated the specification.
All right, so can you give us a list of specifications, because you always have people, you know, I got a couple of facilities, I'm not going to say the names, but I got one lady who's been over at 25th and Diamond forever, right? never figure out a way,
Miss
you know,
Hardy.
to provisionals, just go on and on.
Yeah.
And that person was clearly like
Yeah.
way better than anybody that was on staff. Can you give us the list of specs as relates to the changes and the proposed changes so we can
Sure.
have some answers to people when they don't understand, when they want to know, why can't this person be on staff?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
we have, you know, I really appreciate the relationship that we've been able to build with the Office of Human Resources, because we are, you know, trying different things to figure out how we can make the civil service requirements work for our department. And it's not always easy. And the
Right.
individual that you're talking about, she was eligible for a civil service position and she applied, but unfortunately she is at the bottom of the list. And because we only have a certain number of vacancies, we're not going to be able to reach her. And that's, you know, that is hard, and that happens too. People get in, you know, they make it all the way to get, you know, into the civil service system, and then they don't score well. And I don't have all the answers on that.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes
we certainly want to make it.
people don't do well on tests.
I
mean,
know, I know.
But sometimes people do much better in neighborhoods, particularly neighborhoods that they're from and working with people. So I think we should weight it towards experience, and even if from a geographical perspective, that person's from that community, they should be given some additional support as it relates to the evaluation process. But
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think with the CAP program, we're able to do that, provided we get those specs cleared by the Civil Service Commission. I think the rule of two is challenging, because if we have 15 people on the recreation outreach worker list that we're talking about, there's only about 15 people on that list,
Right.
but we only have 2 vacancies. So,
okay,
and
well, I think
you
that
can't select whoever you want from that list. It's
I think that
unfortunate.
with the renewed interest in rec centers and things that are like that, now's the time to figure out a way to get more people engaged
Totally agree.
that are
Yeah.
compensated. The other thing relating to rec, excuse me, during the rebuild process, we had an agreement that there will be like 40, I think the number was 40 additional
Yes.
staff, skilled tradespeople that will be on staff. And I think we ended up saying it would be at the Redevelopment Authority.
Well, we
so
have,
somewhere.
the 40
So where
positions were
are we
given
at
to
with that?
us, yeah, so let me just pull that up. I have those. Okay, so we were given the 40 rebuild positions. We did not start sort of a full hiring process until after the soda tax legislation was cleared, because that was the funding source for those positions. But I'm happy to report that we are more than halfway through the hiring of those positions. So we have 22 of the individuals hired, and we're still struggling with some of those positions. Because there are specific areas within the skilled trades that citywide we struggle to compete with the private sector jobs for some specific positions within skilled trades, but we're more than halfway there with the 22 positions, and I'm happy to report that it's a very diverse group of folks, including one woman, which is somewhat unusual for the skilled
Right.
trades. So.
Can you give us those numbers?
Sure.
Of where you are?
Sure. So we have, for rebuild, we have 95% male, 5% female, 32% African American, 9% Latino, and 59% Caucasian. So it's about 40% people of color.
All right, well, we're getting there. Okay, and we anticipate being able, do we utilize I think we're looking at a number of the programs, the apprenticeship programs and school district programs.
I think that was more through
as a
PRA,
pool, talent pool.
I think that was more through PRA, because ours have to come through the civil service program for our skilled trades positions. Yeah.
All right, okay, I just want to make sure, people were very concerned about where we were going in terms of staffing levels.
Yes. Another
Okay,
exciting
so you had
update.
22?
If I could give one more update on that I'm really excited about, would you mind? Is that 3 of the positions, 3 or 4 for the playground safety service? This was a great idea that Aparna and Frank Fabi had. Our biggest issue, one of our biggest issues in our system in terms of capital is playground safety surface and the expense of playground safety surface. And so the idea is to use some of the rebuild positions to actually hire an in-house safety surface crew that would be trained to be able to lay safety surface, which will save us an immense amount of money and time. to be able to place and repair safety surface. So that's really exciting.
That's a big issue.
It's a
It
big
shuts
issue.
down the swings and everything else.
Yeah, it's a
if we don't
huge
have the
issue.
appropriate
Sometimes, you know, it's $50,000 of a capital project is just the safety surface. And so we think we can cut that cost really significantly by buying the product, like our skilled trades, you know, like we do with our capital projects now, buying the product and then having our own staff be able to lay the product and also go out and repair, which is something we're not able to do right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we'll keep you posted on that.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Parker.
Thank you, Mr. President, and let me say good afternoon to each of you. I want to start the way I have with each of the other departments before I get to my line of questioning, and appropriately saying thank you to some members of your team: Tiffany Thurman, Arpana Palantino, Orlando Reardon, Chris Creelman, Frank Faby, Ken Shepard, Jerry, I'm going to screw your name up, Boligitis, I don't know what I just said, Azira Robinson, and Lisa Whittle. I want to thank you for all you do to support my staff, my rec center projects, and our community-based organizations. Huge shout out to all of my rec leaders, assistant rec leaders, and support staff. Too many of y'all to name, but I want to especially highlight Ty Kane at the Longcrest Recreation Center. He has showed great leadership by stepping up at Longcrest when the site leadership, you know, was in transition, and he hit the ground running over there. Let me just ask a question because my memory may be failing me. When did the Supreme Court rule on the beverage legislation, the lawsuit? Do we know approximately when they ruled? July of 2018. Okay, so July of 2018, and we so we're not even a year into it yet. It ruled in 18, and my question to you is how many sites would you say have not that haven't been completed, but where are we in the process with rebuild? I want to find out, since that lawsuit was passed in July 2018, how many sites do we have about ready to, where we've identified who is going to be the project user, where we've are working to put together the design team?
So I'd like to ask our colleagues from the Rebuild team to answer that.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman. Nicole Westerman, Executive Director of Rebuild.
First, Nicole, I'm sorry, let me go back. So I know July 18th was when the court ruled. When were the bonds actually issued?
They were issued at the end of November.
So the bonds were issued at the end of November.
And that resulted in $86.5 million for the Rebuild program. 86.5
million. So how many rebuild sites are in the pipeline?
So we have 30 sites that are moving in one way or another. They're in at a range of different points in the process. Some of them have grant agreements that are being executed. Some of them are in design. A few are in construction. We have two major grant agreements for rebuild projects that have been announced, with several more to be announced in the near future.
Based on the 30 that are in the pipeline right now, do you expect any to be completed in 2019, and how many in 2020? And even if you don't have an exact number, if you could give us ballpark, that would be appropriate.
We definitely will have some projects completed in 2019. In fact, the Parkside Fields project, which we had a groundbreaking for in December, is 90% complete. The practice fields there are completed except for the uprights that they have to wait for a couple months for the soil to settle. There are a number of other more modest projects that will be completed in 2019. Our goal is for 2020 to have at least 25 projects actively moving, and for complete, I would need to get back to you, but we did try to provide an update, put together an update that has estimated completion dates for the 30 projects that are underway now, so I can get back to you shortly on that.
Okay, thank you. So for Parks and Recs, let me ask you a question about special projects and the special projects team. What needs to happen in order for the team? And I know you guys are under an intense amount of pressure. I thank you for giving me that data, because we always hear about data that negatively impacts the city of Philadelphia. I didn't know that New York only had 50, and
they charge for them.
And
You have
we
to
have
pay to go to them.
150 rec centers. So thank you for sharing that. Based on that sheer capacity, I know that the expertise of our special projects team is under immense pressure. But I want to talk about their timelines and how do we get work done in a timely fashion. And for me, you know, I'm thinking about the hut at Dorothy Emanuel. And the hut is not the name that the city gave to it or that I gave to it. It's what the community gave to it, and that's for a reason. We finally have a very substantive program that is operating in there, that is serving not just residents in Northwest Philadelphia, but throughout the city of Philadelphia. That is how powerful and necessary this program has become. So what happens when and when the work begins, if a contractor damages furniture or messes up bathrooms, sometimes that has happened at a few of my centers. Tell me, what is the process?
Aparna Palantino, Deputy Commissioner, Parks and Recreation. So, Councilwoman, just to clarify, you're speaking of if our special teams do it or if a contractor comes in to do the work? So,
one, the timeliness of the special projects team, or when a contractor comes in, if the contractor damages property, what happens? Because you know that's happened at one of my centers.
Right. So, with regards to the special team schedule, you know, when you request a project and the funding is made available, we try to provide a schedule. That being said, occasionally, depending on the specific trade, they do occasionally get pulled for emergencies, which, due to the age of our centers and the number of centers, for example, at the hut specifically, if a plumber or HVAC mechanic was working there, and we've had a number of boiler failures recently, they've had to be pulled away to address those so as to prevent another facility from closing. Hopefully through rebuild and the hiring of additional skilled trade staff, we can better manage that now as more and more positions come on through rebuild. With regards to if a contractor were to damage a particular site, they are made to repair it at their cost. We don't request additional funds from council to address things like that. The contractors are on the hook, or we will withhold their payment for work.
I have questions for the second round. My time is up, but we will talk offline. My team will contact your office because we did have a contractor that damaged furniture, and you know, we had an issue with some of the bathrooms, and you know, it doesn't appear that they think that they are liable for what occurred. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon. How are you? Good, how are you? I just have a couple of questions. So, number one, I want to thank Parks and Recreation for all of the work that they do in our communities, and we know that our rec centers and all of our facilities really need a lot of help, a lot of work, and that you all have been at the forefront of making it happen for a very long time, along with the advisory councils. And, you know, I agree with you, Mr. President, that some of those folks are in there. You know, we're missing Parks and Rec staff, but we have some folks who are dedicated volunteers. And so if there's a way to make sure that they are included in the fabric of Parks and Recreations in terms of being compensated and other things that would be appropriate to support them and support the work that they're doing, I'm all for it. But also, you know, that's not to take away from the great work that's done by the Parks and Recreation staff. And I know that as a committee chair, you know, look, I'm tough. You know, I'm really trying to make sure that we do what's best for the city of Philadelphia. I think that you are as well. But I think sometimes we have a difference of opinion in terms of how to get there. And so I just want to ask you a couple of questions about the contracts. And so I've been asking this of every city department because it's important to me when we talk about Philadelphia being the biggest, poorest city in the nation, and we talk about wealth building, when we think about contracts, it's really important that contracts are as close to being locally based as possible. And there's a number of contracts that we've had conversation about recently that are not locally based. One is based out of Paris, France, and one is based out of Chicago. And both of those contracts, when we talked about it, and we've been kind of going back and forth on that, both of those contracts, in my estimation, are things that could be done right here in the city of Philadelphia by Philadelphians and based here, and again, creating wealth here in the city, or certainly in the region. But having contracts that are going to outfit based in Chicago, even though they have local employees, you know, or to Paris, France, you know, these are things that I think are no-brainers, in my opinion. And I know you feel otherwise, but I'm hopeful that we would be able to address that in a way that brings those contracts locally here to the city, and you know, reaching out to different entities that could provide those specific services, I think is crucial. So I've begun to do that, and will give you the results of my work and investigation to give you some options to be helpful, not just, you know, do it this way, but here's some ideas, here's some thoughts on ways that we could do it. So I didn't know if you wanted to, you know, respond to that in terms of contracts overall, and also if you could respond to the amount of contracts, because in looking at your budget summary, it looks like the amount that is, actually that's not yours, it looks like the amount that is being proposed looks way off for fiscal year 19 for the first and second quarter. Even if we double it, assuming the third and fourth quarter are the same, those numbers are like way off, it seems to me. So can you address that, and also contracts in general?
Sure.
And what percentage of contracts are to either Philadelphians or locally based?
Sure. First on the I think you're speaking about the concession agreement, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there are contracts that we let out at Parks and Recreation. There are contracts that we, citywide contracts that we use, and then there are concession opportunities that come up. So I think you're speaking about some of these concession opportunities. One of them at the Horticulture Center, and one of them around the parking
Yes.
that happens for the regattas.
Yes.
The Horticulture Center, and we've talked about this, but the Horticulture Center has been a concession was with Star Catering. They have rebranded as Constellation Catering, and I was glad to hear you say that although they are based out of Paris, the global company, that the local employees and staff are all residents of the Philadelphia area. It was an open RFP for that concession, and they were the only bidder. So we did, you know.
Well, let me. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So we did, you know, open that up for an open bid through the city's process, and Constellation was the only bidder. We were quite happy about the proposal that they gave, and have been very happy with their service thus far at the Horticulture Center. So, and then the other one around the parking, you know, it's a really it's a really challenging issue that we have. That I wish we didn't have around parking in the park system, because it's a lose-lose situation. We have to accommodate cars for different events, and we have to regulate it, because before we regulate it, and no one knows this better than the council president in his district, but if we don't regulate the parking, for instance, when the regattas happen, the 33 regattas that happen along the Schuylkill River, then all heck breaks loose in the community. Yeah. And so we've had this parking agreement, this concession opportunity for quite some time now, and we're looking to renew that opportunity. It's not something that I feel that is something that we can do internally as a department, nor is it something that I think is really core to our mission at Parks and Recreation to manage parking. Again, that's, you know, that's on the concession piece. On the other contracting piece, I can have Marissa Washington talk a little bit about our overall contracts for the department.
Good evening. Good afternoon, Marissa Washington, Deputy Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
So, Councilwoman, so what we reported on for the 10% OEO minority participation is just the dollars that we use for the general fund, and the number is fairly low through the second quarter, and most of that is because of the timing of conforming the contracts. And I also would like to highlight, if you look at the $10 million that we are proposed for FY20 in Class 200, at least a third of that goes towards our citywide contracts for turf and tree maintenance and management.
Okay. You know, I want to circle back to that, Mercer, in just 1 second, but I did want to follow up, Catherine, on your questions, because there's two things. So the first is that when it came to the parking concession, I did reach out to 3 or 4 different service providers that do, you know, that have various contracts, you know, very professional organizations, and so I do have them in the process now of just providing you with some information. So I'm going to gather that information and just provide it to you so that you have an idea in terms of the scope of services that could be provided. And again, my interest really is just making sure that as much as possible that we support local business, that we support people who are living in Philadelphia, paying taxes in Philadelphia, employing people who are also paying taxes in Philadelphia. And I think that too much of the time when you look at contracts that the city of Philadelphia owns, they go elsewhere. And I hear it all the time and I see it all the time, so that's really something that's very important to me. You know, trying to make sure that we get the parking contract, again, it's a small thing, and I know that you are up against the clock, so I don't want to be insensitive to that. So we are working to get you something like this week. So as soon as it comes, we'd be happy to get that to you. I also thought about the Constellation Catering. And although I know you said that there was one bidder, only one bidder for the RFP, it appears to me after reviewing the RFP that it was only meant for one bidder. And I'll say that because I think that the way it was written, most catering companies could not have bid for it. It were only, you know, 1, 2, 3 maybe that could have bid for it. And so it was bid in a way, or the RFP was put out in a way that really was not you know, open and welcoming to other folks who could qualify. You know, if you set the bar so high that only, you know, a huge conglomerate can apply and can be eligible for it, then it knocks everyone else out. No one else can apply. So that's something that I would like to, you know, revisit a conversation about, because when we talk about the Horticultural Center, you know, this is someplace that, again, I've used it in the past, and, you know, other people I know have used it over the years, and it used to be a place that almost anyone of any economic means, for the most part, could rent. By having this exclusive catering outfit, which is pretty pricey, it really does exclude most Philadelphians from being able to rent the Horticultural Center for any sort of events or activities. And so that's what my concern is. And also, again, it's not locally based. And there are tons of locally based, you know, catering companies, food service companies that would love to have a shot at it. But what we did in the RFP is we required that you had to put up something like $25,000 a year plus $100,000 at the front and then the other $100,000 at the back. It knocks a whole bunch of folks out who don't have that kind of capital. But again, if you're, you know, a worldwide conglomerate, then you've got plenty of funds to be able to do that kind of thing. So, you know, I just think that that's something that we have to look at. I know my time is up, but I'll come back, but I don't know if you want to answer any of that.
So I think we're really fortunate in Philadelphia that unlike other park systems around the country, we actually are able to retain our concession revenue. That's unique. For example, New York City, all the concession revenue that comes in for, say, Central Park, until they reach a certain threshold, all that money goes to the general fund, and then the park system gets to keep a certain percentage. In Philadelphia, whoever did this legislation, and perhaps it was some of you about 10 years ago, we were able to retain, the Parks and Recreation Department was able to retain the concession revenue to put back into the system. And So the Horticulture Center, as an example, we've been able to invest almost $500,000 back into the Horticulture Center, which has really critical capital needs, also into free programming at the center to activate the center and get more people invited to the center, feel that they want to come to the center. We've been able to invest those funds that we've raised through the concession back into the facility. And I can't stress enough how valuable I think that is and how critical that is. The same goes for, you know, all of the other concessions that we have. We're able to reinvest those funds back into the site. When the Welcome Center restaurant opens at Love Park, we're going to have a revenue source that's going to allow us to maintain Love Park at a level that Center City District maintains its parks, which just, you know, is a luxury that we don't always have, you know, at Parks and Recreation because of limited resources. So I do think that, you know, the Horticulture Center for many years, way before my time, was run by a different caterer and different catering opportunities, and they folded. Mm-hmm. They folded, and the center fell into disrepair because there was no investment in it. And when Star came in, a few years ago, was able to, put resources into it, market it, advertise for it, and promote it. It became viable, and it became a real destination, and we've been able to put those resources that they raise, that revenue, back into the facility and the grounds, and I just can't stress how really critical that is. I realize that it's not accessible to everybody. What I love about our park system is that there's so many it has such diversity in terms of places that can host events, depending on what your ability to what size of a crowd that you need, what kind of aesthetic that you want, and what you're able to afford, and so I think that if folks are not able to have an event at the Horticulture Center, we work very hard and put this on our website to offer many other opportunities for them to have events elsewhere in our park system. But it is the trend that you'll find for almost all catering venues in the city, that they all are moving to an exclusive caterer because of the revenue that can be generated and the instability of being able to manage a site without having that one caterer. I'll give you another example. Belmont Mansion. We met with, and we all know that Audrey Thornton passed away recently, but before her passing, we met with her daughter, Dr. Booker, at length about Belmont Mansion, which is just this incredible asset. I mean, probably one of the most beautiful views of the city of Philadelphia anywhere. And they've been really struggling because they don't have a structured catering program there. They have a volunteer staff. They now have a paid individual that just started, but they've struggled for years about how to maintain that facility, how to activate and program that facility, and we've been in conversations with them about thinking about an exclusive caterer that they could engage to help them because of, that is the business model right now that's working for venues, is an exclusive caterer. So, yeah, that's.
Well, I think as long as we, I think as the city of Philadelphia, we have to recognize that when we go to exclusive catering agreements, that we knock out a large swath of our population from being able to use our facilities, and they're taxpayers too. So I think that we have to ask ourselves, do we feel comfortable with that? And the idea that people can't use the Horticultural Center because it's too expensive, but saying, well, we have other venues, you can go there. It's not the same. It's not, the same in terms of the way that person is being treated by the city, and saying, it's very dismissive. Oh, well, we can't, you can't use this, but we'll find a little something for you somewhere else. And it doesn't feel right. And as a city, I just know that we can do better. I think that we should aim to do better, and we can do better. And there's no reason that we have to go to an exclusive contract, in my opinion, because the bar is so low in terms of what we were asking them to do. So we were asking, if I remember correctly, it was about $500,000 or $600,000 that we were asking from this caterer. Actually, I think it was less than that. It was under $500,000 that we were asking from this exclusive caterer. So the question is, can the city not invest $500,000 of its own money for its own facility and make that up through the rentals in some sort of a way so that everyone has an opportunity to use the facility? Or are we just going to say, well, if you're limited income-wise, you're not able to use the facility. You know, you just got to go somewhere else. And as we get more and more contracts that are sole sourced or, you know, exclusive, you know, then it becomes less and less likely that you'll be able to use anything in the Fairmount Park system. So I'm just against it. I'm going to be against it no matter what facility it is. I just don't think it's right. And I think that we need to figure out other ways to fund these facilities if we're going to rent them out. You know, we need to make the investment. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Can I respond, Council President? Can I respond again or no?
Okay.
Just that you can host an event you can have an event at the Horticultural Center without a catering. So we do have people that have a wedding ceremony. The Horticultural Center. You can without it. There's an exclusive caterer, but if you wanted to get married at the Horticulture Center,
right,
you can do that. But if you want to have an event with catering, you have to use the caterer, right? So
yeah, but most people are going to have food.
We have a lot of people who choose that as a venue for their wedding and then have their reception elsewhere. It's a beautiful venue. And I also want to say that we do have 500 buildings throughout Parks and Recreation, and we have, you know, hopefully 100 of them or so that will be impacted by rebuild, but there's far more that won't be impacted by rebuild, unfortunately. And you know, if we were to have that kind of investment, I would really like to see it go to a recreation center or a playground where there is real need.
Right.
So thank you.
Well, let me just ask, if you want to do an event at the Horticultural Center that's not, with no food, let's say if you want to have a wedding there during the summer months, you have to pay for air conditioning, correct?
Well, it's not air conditioned, so if you want to have it air conditioned, you would have to pay for air conditioning. It's a little cooler. There's a 1970s cooling system there that is not ideal, but
well, we were told that you have to pay for air conditioning. So what's the cost of air conditioning just by itself?
Yeah,
I was told that it was $8,000 to $10,000.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, so it's not really usable during the summer.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the point I wanted to make.
That's because you're going to now make me ask you, give me a list of all the events you've had when people didn't have food. I mean, I'm sure it's like 2, right? If that. All right, let me move on because we have a couple other. Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon. I'm sorry I missed our city rep, but I did thank her. She's so good and works so well with us, with our Africans and people coming in town and our flags. So we're still working on one aspect of that, but we thank her and her department. So, Commissioner, we are, I mentioned it to the library today, and since we're talking about rebuild, we would like to, by the end of next week, do 2 press conferences. One for King Sessing, and one, even though it's not in this year's budget, for George's Library. So will you help us out and get that in?
This King Sessing is my own rec center.
That's right.
I would love to do that, but it's really up to the rebuild team. They're still, and I got a thumbs up, Councilwoman. So it sounds like we're a go.
Thank you. That's all I need at the moment. Thank you for helping us with Chucky. And we need to do another meeting on SARE.
Oh, sure.
SARE is closed again.
The pool is. The center is open. The pool is down, yes.
So every time it's open, as soon as we leave the room that day, the next week is closed again. So maybe we can all meet and figure out what we can do.
Yeah, the pool is owned, the whole facility is owned and run by the school district from a maintenance standpoint, and we've struggled. We currently only have 1 indoor pool that is operating. All of our indoor pools are school district facilities that we program and staff, and it's been a real challenge for us. Especially in terms of training and screening lifeguards for the summer. We have to send everybody up to the Northeast. We've been shuttling people up to the Northeast. But we would love to see SARE up and running. Unfortunately, it's the school district, and, you know, so we can have an offline conversation about that, Councilwoman.
Yeah, thank you. We'd love to meet with you and them and try to make it better so we don't have to go through this a few times every year. Agreed. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Commissioner, how are you?
Hello, Councilman.
Well, thank you for coming in here. I want to thank all your entire team, your staff, deputy commissioners and district managers and so forth, and everybody that's out there trying to provide a good and great experience when it comes to our parks and recreation. If it was that easy to get anything done like Councilwoman Blackwell, I'll just come in here and put my request on. I want 10 groundbreaking ceremonies
you have them, sir.
by next week, if that's okay.
You have them.
And we do, I know.
My car goes automatically up 95 now.
That's right. Well, I mean, it's called home field advantage when you're coming from the Northeast, right? So, but thank you, and and I do appreciate it, and I just want to state for the record, we as a body made some difficult decisions in some tough votes for additional revenue. It goes back into in rebuild and making sure that we help subsidize, right, or add on to the Parks and Rec's capital budget. That being said, I can't imagine how much work everybody's been under trying to get things moving in a already complicated and slow system that we have as city government. What can we do to help assist you make sure that we get that pleasant experience and that we showcase to the city of Philadelphia why we make these difficult decisions? All right, and I'll give you an example. In my blessed 7.5 years here on City Council, for those who were looking, hi Mom, we spent like $9 million in capital investment into our parks and recreations and libraries over the next 2 years because of, or 2.5 years because of additional revenue or through, the rebuild experience. I'm going to have $18 million, roughly. I don't want to be held, to that exact number, but it's double the amount of resources that were available. So when neighborhoods desperately need a safe, redesigned place that they can go with their families, their grandkids, their neighbors, we're accomplishing that. How do you feel the goals are at this point when we're pairing what we choose with programming and making sure that our neighbors are included in not just the engagement but the result of tough decisions and a whole lot of hard work?
I think it's really hard to manage expectations. I wish we could wave a magic wand and make every rec center and playground perfect in the city. It is hard for me as a commissioner and as a mom to go out to facilities and not, see them in a state where I don't think they're good enough for my kid, and if they're not good enough for my kid, why are they good enough for any kid? So I think that's hard. I think rebuild is going to help us, do a tremendous reset in terms of, bringing many of our facilities to a state where they need and should be. It's not going to do everything, and that's hard, right? It's hard to know that even with $500 million, it's not going to do everything. We've tried to be really clear when we're out in communities with the rebuild team and talking to community members that the sky is not the limit, right? We want them to be aspirational. We want to think about how sites can truly be relevant to the existing community and the future community and children, in generations to come, but that, we're not going to be able to do absolutely everything on every wish list. That's a hard job that we have to do every day, but it's important to manage expectations while also allowing people to dream a little.
It is, and, I don't say that for not being able to manage the expectations or reaching our goals. I say that to point out that some of the decisions, not just based on repaving concrete paths and fences, that you're rebuilding communities. Infrastructure isn't just equipment and paint, or it's people, and it's people and children's through programs. So that's the expectations that I want to talk about. Your programming, paired with the decisions on what part of our infrastructures we're investing in. Because to me, in our conversations, and yourself and your staff has been incredibly helpful in understanding when it comes to making sure that we're providing safe places with programs, right? So can you talk about that a little bit in being able to, for me, in my district, I know we're adding programs. I mean, I have a population growth in my district. And, you know, you go out to Russo Park and you go out to some of these other playgrounds where it needs some, you know, like a facelift, and it needs some additional infrastructure built. We just had a cleanup at, you know, when we had the, you know, Philadelphia Day cleanup. And, you know, we were going around and, you know, just a simple repaving of a pavement and planting of trees, all right, look fantastic, right? And people, even in communities that need the facelift, and, you know, parks that need, and recreations that need more equipment, people they're playing, they're out there. The weather's changing, programs are where it's at, all right? So I think that, you know, your program managers are doing an incredible job. You know, how can we help on the professional level to ensure or to keep this thing moving? Because there's a good plan, is what I'm saying. So yeah. I think the expectations, I think you sell yourself, you know, short as a department when it comes to, you know, expectations. You're not going to be able to fix everything, right? But you're going to be able to make improvements, all right, for use.
Yeah.
All right, and our recreation centers are highly utilized. There's key spots. So can you talk about some of the program that's paired with the investment in rebuild and the use of out-of-time school and
Sure.
And programs for our recs? Because I think people really need to know that. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. So a couple things. First is that, you know, I appreciate what you're saying. We have amazing recreation leaders, and, you know, they are, you know, they're doing this work in every nook and cranny of the city, right? And it is, you know, we do our best to support them, but it's really the community that helps to drive the programming in our centers. And the advisory councils really help us determine, you know, what types of programming is important to communities, and that's the direction that we want to continue to move into the future, is really making sure that our programs are very relevant to those communities, that they're responsive to the needs and the interest of those communities, and that's all part of our strategic plan. It's also part of our strategic plan to have, you know, really great standards for programming. You know, what makes a great program? What makes a great after-school program? What makes a great summer camp? And how do we make sure that that quality of programming is not dependent on that recreation leader, right? Because, you know, it needs to be a quality that's a standard across the board. And then we need to be open to innovation. And I think, Councilman, the program that you helped start, which the Play Philly program, is a great example of, you know, an innovative program that, you know, meets the needs of the city, you know, around health and wellness, and is, to be honest, pretty easy to implement, you know, and easy to scale, you know, to build around the system. So, you know, I think that's my thoughts on that point. In terms of how rebuild can impact programming, I think about Vera Recreation Center. We have, and you wouldn't know it by walking up and looking at Vera, but we have the most incredible gymnastics program at Vera Recreation Center that you could possibly imagine. About 130 girls performing gymnastics. They're going to state competitions. And they're doing it in a facility that is literally, you know, falling down. It is structurally sound, so it is sound and safe to be in right now. But we had to close Vera for a couple months. And you know, make it secure and then reopen it. And thank God it's the first rebuild site, because these young women, they deserve a world-class gymnastics facility. You know, they deserve not a makeshift gym that doesn't have heat and doesn't have air conditioning and, you know, doesn't really fit their mats or their equipment. They deserve you know, a part of Vera that is, you know, is well suited to their needs. It's serving primarily kids in that community, but kids are coming from other sections of the city as well to participate in that program. And we you know, what we've done over the years, because our facilities are so old, the Bear Recreation Center is hundreds of years old, is we've retrofitted our programming to fit into these old centers. And I think Rebuild gives us an opportunity to re-envision, facilities that can better match our programs as opposed to our programs trying to fit into those facilities. So that's, I think, really exciting.
Well, I know that with the improvements in my district, with the new design, the new kind of spatial layout and interactive playground equipment, that really opens it up for every child and every part of the community, especially with the autism spectrum and that kind of engagement. Can you talk about some of the new interactive equipment that you're having in our playgrounds?
Sure, I'll let Aparna talk about it.
Actually, since 2016, Councilwoman Bassett introduced a bill, in fact, around those goals of inclusive playgrounds. And since then, we've had about 33 playgrounds that have been renovated that have taken into consideration all those things. Children of different abilities on the autism spectrum, and we have another 10 to 15 underway already. It's become something that's part of every playground or every facility that we renovate. It's inherent to the design. There's new equipment coming out every day, which facilitates more activities for children of different abilities. So we are exploring those. We go to conventions, at least various conventions, 2 to 3 times a year. We engage with different manufacturers to come in and provide trainings to us. So as long as we can maintain it, we're trying to install it.
And I know you are. And this is a great opportunity to have good nonprofit and private partners in trying to adjust to where we are as a city and the needs of our children and families moving forward. So some of our conversations is having an exclusive only playground for children that are have special needs and accessible, and those who need a little more of an interactive spectrum of equipment and layout. So I look forward to that in Northeast Philly, and the outcomes of the programs in general that is with that's coupled with the investment and the infrastructure is I think we should have high expectations, and I know we do, because that's where we're starting. We're starting with positive outcomes, all right, because we make tough decisions, all right, we're reprioritizing, and that reprioritizing is all reinvested back into our communities. So I know, speaking for myself, whatever I can fight for Parks and Recreation, especially on the professional end, this way you can you could vet through the services and move things into more of a timely fashion. I am more than willing to be helpful, and I'm sure this council body is too. So I appreciate what you're doing and look forward to those positive outcomes, like by next week. But that's besides me. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you. So I just had a couple more questions, and just wanted to follow up on that line of questioning from Councilmember Heenan regarding cameras. So back in I think it was 2013, Councilman, that we worked together, our office put together a proposal to put cameras in every rec center and playground facility to make sure that our young people, and really anyone who uses our facilities, is safe. And I've seen coverage, actually news coverage of not so good events that have happened at some of our centers, but the clarity of the cameras and the pictures were able to get the police right on it so that folks were apprehended. And I want to thank Councilman Heenan. He was one of the first district members to get on board and be in agreement and to support that initiative. So we were able to completely blanket our city with cameras at every rec center and playground. So can you talk about where that is now? Are all cameras installed everywhere?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we've done cameras, 1,287 cameras at 109 facilities. So we're getting there. I'll let Aparna speak to specifics about the continuing plan. It's a continuation. But Councilman, you're 100% right. They have become incredibly useful to the police. And I would say it's weekly, if not daily. that we get a request from police to view our footage.
Wow.
And we have so many, I mean, it's a very comprehensive system in that, you know, when the Capitol team goes out to spec out a site for where the cameras belong, you know, they're covering almost every aspect of the site, which means you're also covering streets beyond the site, you know, and there's, you know, we're just, we've been, I think, really surprised at the amount of evidence we've been able to provide to police through those cameras. I remember one incident that probably happened about a year and a half to 2 years ago where an individual committed a shooting outside, literally outside of one of our rec centers. He then, the staff heard the shooting, so they gathered the kids in the after-school room, you know, as our shelter-in-place policy, right? And then, unbeknownst to us, the individual came into the building, grabbed a kid's backpack, stuck the gun in the backpack, and walked back out the back door. And we didn't even know that happened, but they were actually able to apprehend the individual and look at all that through the camera footage. So
Excellent.
that is one anecdote of many that I think wasn't the intent for the camera initiative. I know it was really about safety at recreation centers, but has been, I think, a collateral benefit to that program. So Aparna can talk more about what the process is.
And just to add, we have a few more buildings that are underway, but many of those are either covered through the rebuild program will be addressed, or as we plan for other renovations at those buildings, there will be cameras installed.
Okay.
The other thing is a lot of our neighborhood parks that previously it was challenging for us to be able to install cameras due to technology, we're able now to cover them because we can install pole-mounted equipment that allows us then to do neighborhood parks that don't have buildings or staff sites.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so pretty much what's left now in terms of rec centers are projects that we're waiting for on rebuild for.
Or that have upcoming renovation
Or
projects.
have renovations.
Yeah, we're just, it's become part of every capital improvement that we do. If a site has another capital improvement and it doesn't have cameras yet, we either reach out to the council member for ITEF funding, or if we have any available funding as part of the project, we include cameras.
Very good, very good. Now, one other question. At the same time that we did the camera bill, the camera initiative, we also did a bill that would require Parks and Recreation to produce a report that would give some sort of information in terms of criminal activity that happened on the site. You know, when Mike DiBerardinis was the commissioner, I've been asking for those reports then. I'm still asking for them now. I've never seen one of these reports produced, but it is the law that we are supposed to, council is supposed to be provided with a list so that as district members, when something happens, we can know where to put the resources at. There's no excuse that we didn't have information that a lot of robberies were happening around, you know, recreation center. There's, you know, when we have the data as district council members, we're held responsible and we can act appropriately. So that report is really important. I don't believe it's ever been produced. And so, you know, we've been a little bit lax on it, so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to have one maybe by the end of this budget cycle.
I'm happy to say we do have the report, and we can provide that to you.
You have a report?
We have a report. We actually worked with the Philadelphia Police and their data office
all right
to actually, with our GIS team and their GIS team, and we're able to overlay the police data on top of our data. And so we now not only have the report, we also have harm scores for our centers. They're called harm scores, and it's it's police terminology, I guess, around the likelihood of being harmed based on crime at a facility, and that's also informing our new staffing structure. So even if, you know, the old staffing structure was, you have our staff have heard us talk about this so much, they're tired of it, but if you have a large facility, that's a Class A facility, and this old classification we've been using since the 1950s, you get a certain complement of staff based on the size of that facility. And our new philosophy is that instead of staffing facilities, we want to staff neighborhoods. And so even if you have a small facility in a neighborhood, if it's an area of high crime, that has a high harm score, that has a high poverty, that we should be staffing that differently and even though it's a small center, perhaps it needs more staff. So that's informing our staffing structure, that information as well.
Okay, so how is that working in places, let's say like Heritage Playground, which is in a
What playground? I missed what you said.
Heritage, which is, I believe, 15th and Somerset, I want to say, in that range, in that vicinity. And it's in the 8th Council District, it's in North Philadelphia, it's in an area that I would say, you know, probably has a high harm score based on the way you just described it. And so, are you familiar with what we're doing there? Or?
Yes. Yeah, so right now, so we're just in the process of doing this realignment. It's part of our strategic plan that we're still implementing. So the goal is to look at all of our sites based on this information and then realign staff appropriately. That Heritage is not a currently staffed site, am I right? So we'd have to look at, you know, if we were able to increase staff to put a staff member there, or even, you know, not a full-time staff member, but to see people deployed at different sites. For a long time, forever, we've had the philosophy that only rec centers get staffed and neighborhood parks do not, or playgrounds do not get staffed if they don't have a building, and that's something we're looking at as well. Is there a way that we can be realigning our staff and redeploying our staff to say, well, you're not just here to manage a rec center, but you should also be doing some programming in that park or in that playground, right? You can be based here out of the recreation center, but you can be deployed, you know, a few times a week at a local recreation center or a local park or playground, and that's something that we're looking at. So we'll keep you posted on that progress, but that's definitely the way that our thinking is going, and we're using that that crime data to help inform those decisions. It's very different philosophy, so it's a big change, but we're really excited about it.
Okay, well, I'm very interested in it, so I would like to get more information. Mr. Chairman, I can go on? Okay. Just a couple of other things. So I know that there was a lot of conversation about the Philadelphia Activity Fund, and so I wanted to just go on record to say that the Activity Fund, in my opinion, does a lot of wonderful things and funds a lot of fantastic programs throughout the city of Philadelphia. And it's always easy to go with the negative and to say something negative without actually coming out and seeing some of the programs that are funded. We fund everything from, you know, somebody's block party where they, you know, might not be able to provide food or, you know, snacks or refreshments or activities for the block, to, as you are aware, a summer event series where we touch about 1,000 people a week in and week out for 6 weeks straight. And so these are things that are done that I think are, you know, just wonderful assets. Everybody's not coming down to Penn's Landing. Everybody's not coming downtown for their activities or for Wawa Welcome America or all those kinds of activities. So these are the things that are happening in the neighborhood with people who are often overlooked but who are working hard to provide activities for our neighbors. So I just really wanted to go on record and to say that and to, you know, voice my strong support for the Philadelphia Activities Fund. And while, you know, not perfect and probably could use a little tinkering around the edges, this is something that really does serve and gives back to the neighborhoods where otherwise a lot of the programs and activities just would not happen without the Philadelphia Activity Fund. So I want to thank you. I want to thank Marissa. I want to thank Ken. Ken's not here.
Ken's not here.
Ken's not here. I want to thank Ken especially, you know, because he does all of the hard work and puts up with all of us crazy members of council to make our projects and our events happen in the district. So I just really wanted to say that. Also, one last thing, actually two last things. Saturday evening, and I was just saying to the library director earlier during the day, Saturday evening I was in the area of Broad and Hunting Park, and there was an event I was going to, and at a local takeout joint, there was probably about 20, 30 kids hanging out, very young, you know, I would say all between the ages of 15 and 25, who were just sort of hanging out, you know, not necessarily doing positive activities. You know, we broke up a potential fight between a group of girls. And so one of the folks who was at the event said that he talked to some of the young men, and he said, you know, kind of like, why are you out here? What's going on? He said, well, we don't have any place else to go. You know, we don't have any place else to go. The rec centers are closed. You know, the libraries are closed. Like, you know, everything's closed. So, you know, this is our spot. And so I say, what is it that the city of Philadelphia is able or willing to do to make sure that our rec centers are open with programming, particularly during these summer months? Now, I know already that the money is not there right now, but I think that we are in crisis mode right now. We've had a record number of shootings. There's an article in today's Enquirer about Philadelphia having the equivalent of a mass shooting almost every day in this city. And we have become so, it has become so normalized in the city that we don't even notice it anymore. And we can't continue to normalize this. And so I guess I'm just really making a pitch and an appeal that we find a way, no matter what it takes, during these warm weather months, to make sure that as many kids as we possibly can get into these rec centers, that there is programming there, programming that they're going to want to come to in the evenings, on the weekends in particular. So that's Friday night and Saturday night, you know, hours till midnight or something like that. I don't know what it takes. I assume, you know, what some of the activities might be, you know, sports or whatever, you know, young men and women are interested in doing. But whatever it is, I think that we have to do it to get them into a safe space, because otherwise, you know, I just hate to think what's going to happen. And I always dread the warm weather months. As much as I love warm weather, I also dread it because I know what's going to happen. I know that there's going to be shootings. I know that there's going to be fights and all kinds of craziness happening with young people who don't have anything to do. So I would really like to have some sort of a plan for us being open. I'm not saying being open 24 hours a day, even though that would be nice. And really would be quite helpful, I think, in this matter. But if we can't do 24 hours a day, we at least have to we have to be open till midnight. We have to be open till midnight. I don't even think it's a question. This is something we have to do.
Well, Councilwoman, we don't agree on everything, but I absolutely agree with you that if we could open rec centers longer, I would love to. I think the evenings are important. I think Sundays are important. Our rec centers are not open on Sundays.
Yeah.
And I think there was a long time when that made sense, 50 years ago. But it's probably, it's a huge request that we receive. And I would, you know, I'm very interested in having rec centers open more hours.
Can you get back to us on what it would take to make that happen?
Sure, I can look at our staffing structure and try to determine what that would look like.
That would be good.
Yeah.
If we could have some sort of a sense of how many workers it would take, how many hours you think that we could be open, you know, what are you requiring from the community? How many hours, you know, listen, I can volunteer in my recreation center, Pleasant Playground. How many hours do you need me there, you know, on Saturday night? I don't have a whole lot going on Saturday night. So, but I'll be there. I mean, you tell me what it needs to be to happen, you know, and we'll figure out how to make it happen. Because I have to tell you, when I see these kids just sort of hanging around, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if I pull off and then 10 minutes later, you know, something jumps off, because there wasn't a lot of positive activity that was happening for them. And they were just trying to make the best of being in the city in the summertime or in the warm weather. They're trying to make the best of a nice night out. And so how do we keep them safe? How do we protect our kids?
I mean, we have, you know, our rec centers are open more than 40 hours a week. We also permit 91 school gyms. So, you know, that's 15,000 hours of additional time at additional facilities that we're permitting, right? That we're making available to young people. And it's not enough. I mean, we have so much demand on our facilities and spaces, and I think it's a good problem to have. I think it's you know, we're a city that's really blessed with these assets, and it's wonderful that people want to use them at the level that they can. So we can certainly get some information to you on that.
Very good. So we'll circle back and follow up with you on that. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to be wrapping up. Chair recognizes Councilman Tottenberger.
Chairman Heenan, thank you so much. Really one question, and it could be an approximation. The budget reflects at some point somewhere how many new trees will be planted in our Fairmount Park, whether it's on the street or in the park itself. And also if it encompasses grants or other plant materials from other sources.
And so what's the question? Is it how many trees? As I pull my
Trees,
notes up.
yeah, I like to know. I want to breathe air better.
You mean
and,
the agronomist would like more information about trees?
Well, I don't want more information. I think my degree in agronomy has prepared me pretty well. I'm looking for the number of trees approximately, and I'm not, you know, beating you up.
We are always grateful, Councilman Tolberger, for your interest in trees. We very much appreciate it.
It's very important. Environment's important.
Let's see. How many trees have been planted? I have a lot of numbers here, so let me...
Or will be planted.
Or will be planted.
On the street and/or in the park, or both?
Yeah, so I'm not doing the quick math, but we have, it looks like about 1,000 trees have been planted.
Okay.
And I don't have exactly how many trees will be planted. I know, sorry, so there we go. 659 trees we plan to plant. And then that doesn't count the, so that's the trees that we will be planting either in the street or in parks. That doesn't count the tree filly program and the trees that we will be distributing to homeowners to plant in their yards.
Because they come from separate sources, or they come from?
It's a private funding source, correct?
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that information. And Mr. Chairman, thank you.
So happy.
Well, when you graduated with a bunch of arboriculture people, they like to know what their business is going to be, and it's good to have.
We like tree nerds, Al. We like that.
Trees are important.
Commissioner, if I may, so I missed, and I apologize, on the hiring and where we at in the process of the, what's it,
The skilled trades positions.
skilled trades, and where we are
Sure.
in that hiring process. So it was in 2 years, a budget 2 years ago.
Yeah, and then
and then we put a hold on it because of the, because of everything was being held up in litigation.
Correct, yeah.
Where are we now?
So now we're hiring at a clip, and we're at 22 of the 40 positions that have been filled.
And they're civil service, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And you know, we've had a lot of success in some of the areas. We struggle, to be honest, in some of the other skilled trades areas, mainly because of the competition with other groups that are hiring right now, some fellow, city agencies that are hiring.
There are thousands of jobs
Yes.
available left to be filled in the city of Philadelphia as we speak. Thousands of jobs. What does the civil service list look like, just process-wise? Like,
There's
so
different lists for each
You have
position.
18 more to fill, and
Yes, and
that just fills that requirement, not including.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, we have 9 in process, so we actually only have about maybe 9 more to fill.
Okay.
So we have 22 that are hired, we have 9 that are in process, so we probably, only have 9 more to fill. Each trade has a different list, so if you're looking for electrician, HVAC, carpenter, you go off a different list. We've been actually really pleasantly surprised to see some of the numbers on the list, to have some inventory. We've been very aggressive about getting to those names as soon as we can. We've struggled a little bit in some of our group leader positions. So what we're doing with the 40 positions is we're building a special capital squad of guys and gals that can actually go out and do these capital projects, as opposed to our general maintenance team, which have to be pulled, as Aparna was talking about, to work on different, to move from completing work orders to doing capital projects. So some of the positions that we're looking to hire are for instance, a group leader for roofing or a group leader for electricians. They're a little challenging to fill because that's a promotional position. Right. And so, but we're very optimistic. Like I said, we're at 22. We have 9 in process. We're pretty optimistic that we're going to be able to close the gap on the final few.
And that's good to hear. I mean, and that just fulfills the special projects.
Correct. That doesn't count
our.
You're right. We have other vacancies in the skilled trades.
I know public property has the same
Yes.
issue. I know the water department has the same issue. I know. So, I mean just for anybody and everybody that's listening, the city of Philadelphia is hiring. Go to phila.gov, look at the different departments, sign up for the test, take it. So I got a question about the test. Is there a waiting list on the test that you're selecting from, or are people not signing up for the test?
Yeah, that's a better question for OHR, Councilman.
Right.
Yeah, I know that as soon as a list becomes available, when we have a vacancy, when we have a position available, we request a list from the Office of Human Resources, a certified list, and as soon as they get us that list, we're hiring. We're pulling off that list to anybody who will, if they're qualified and they want to work with us, we
it's
pull
supply
them
and demand.
off the list.
Yeah. Early in this hearing, we was talking about how can we help you on a professional level, all right? So that's great on the professional services end, in your capital team or your developmental team and your program team. But to implement a lot of this and to do the, upkeep and everything, we need people on the ground that, they're going to work in the field every single day trying to, fix things that need repair. There's a need, so there's a supply and demand of that, and the need is high priority right now.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
If there is something that you could get to the chair or council president or circulate on some, like I know there's a portal for new hires from HR, but if you could if you could pass along, so we could circulate it with, the community groups that we come in touch with every day. People are always looking for jobs, and I know we as council members, have that kind of relationships throughout our district where we're always trying to promote. And like when I do social media, aside from, your typical trolls, that are out there, I had, they're one of the highest hit rate and views or, job opportunities. So, if we could help assist with promoting to the city of Philadelphia positions on the skilled and non-skilled trade level, because again, it's not just, Parks and Rec, but it is critical, I think, for everything to be working tandemly together with your investment in the project teams, special projects, your regular capital, upkeep and repair and maintenance, as well as rebuild, who's also working with, PRA in that department. Everything's all kind of, together, working towards, the outcomes that we've been talking about. So that would be helpful. Another question I have on attrition. All right, attrition with staff at a supervisory level, and people who are were just starting to hire in one of the. So my concern is, and not with just Parks and Rec, just in general with all departments. All right, and I'm gonna talk about this with every department that comes up, and we had to deal with it through drop with our fire department, for example. There was a gap in between people who have experience who are in supervisory positions or people who are being promoted to supervisory positions, and then there was a slowdown on hiring for budgetary reasons, and now the city's finally in a position where we're going to start hiring again instead of letting people go and not filling the vacancies, and we have this gap disparity in experience. Or can we start taking a look at that as we go through this process and understand our needs a little bit better, because everybody's working so hard to make sure that one, our core services are being taken care of, two, working with rebuild, and trying to fill the immediate needs. But I'm looking at down the road and making sure that when people who've earned the retirement, all right, and they can retire with dignity and respect, for their public service, that there are people who are in the pipeline, to get some of that institutional knowledge that's working through the field of how things operate with the city. I know that's more of a comment, but the ask is if you could start taking a look at the workforce pipeline in through your operation system.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Last on two things, but one request is, could you provide to the chair a list of all leases, that we have with the from Parks and Rec, whether, and more specifically, but I'll just do it generally, with the school district. All right.
With the school district?
With the school district.
Okay.
Specifically. I have and I'm just making this of note, I know it's school district property, but, up at Lincoln High School, we have, and it's leased to the, for Parks and Rec over to the school district. It's the only indoor, public, public pool, and there's been a need for stairs. All right? We have a robust senior program that uses these things, and they have a hard time getting in and out. So, and I know it's school district again. There are things like that makes me wonder, or makes me start to, to question what is the school district doing to fulfill their responsibilities as initially agreed upon with Parks and Rec, because I'm not sure that they're actually fulfilling it.
The pool situation is tricky, and we'll have to look into that, because I'm not actually sure. I know the school district owns the indoor pools, and I know we staff and program them, and I'm not sure how that relationship started. We appreciate the relationship because, as I mentioned before, we can use those indoor facilities not just to have swim lessons year-round for children and just recreational opportunities for families, but we have to hire 400 lifeguards every summer, and we need to train and screen those lifeguards, and we do that now. We do that starting in January, so we need those indoor pools to be able to do that. As I mentioned, so right now we have 3 indoor pools, and 2 of them are not working. Now, we don't maintain those pools. I don't believe we have any kind of a lease arrangement. I'm not even sure what we have in writing, to be honest, Councilman.
Well, there'll certainly be questions when the school district
but
comes
we,
up.
but we enjoy the being able to use those pools. But we do have 2 of them that are down. And as a matter of fact, we just worked out an agreement with the YMCA to borrow their pools on Fridays and Saturdays to screen lifeguards because we're just really struggling. Lincoln is our only working pool right now, indoor.
Correct.
And so we are, there's just too many of our lifeguards or people who are interested in becoming lifeguards who can't make it up to Mayfair, right? So we're actually shuttling them up, so that we can screen them and train them. So, I'm happy to look into what paperwork we have, if any, around those arrangements with the pools specifically. But
the pool specifically, but the school district generally.
Sure.
It just, I just want to see what the, what the expectations are, or what the arrangement are for facilities upkeep and programming on the school district side, because I get when there's a budget shortfall, there needs to be tough decisions, but I have a lot of seniors who are on an ongoing basis and chronically in need of and urging my office to to do something with the pool steps. So I look forward to having that conversation. And lastly, speaking of Lincoln, and I have again, like I was saying earlier, I have a population growth in my district, which is fabulous. It presents other challenges, right? But we've been able to navigate, and working with Parks and Rec, you've been an incredible partner with trying to accommodate every person, culture, organization, constituent as we possibly can to address even some of the temporary needs for long-term goals. But a long-term goal for me and vision is, as the population grows, as Lincoln High School turns into an education type of campus, that we consider that site being a super site, which is a huge investment, but I think a super site there will really be a great add-on to Northeast Philadelphia, and it accommodate a tremendous need for people scrambling around for permits, people, more private and nonprofit investments when it comes to the playing fields. They have they have the Stadium Bowl there at Lincoln that it needs a lot of work. But I think, having it become a super site in the future would really be a tribute to Northeast City, Philadelphia. So I'm just throwing it out there so that conversation, can, continue as we move forward over the next year. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Bass.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one more question for you, and that was about something that came up earlier regarding mural arts and rebuild. And they didn't have a particular role in the work that we're doing. So when they work with Parks and Recreation or through Rebuild, is there a role for them, or?
Yeah, I talk
how
to Jane on a weekly basis, and we're working with her on 3 or 4 different projects now.
Okay.
One is a rebuild project. The other 2 are just recreation centers. I'd say so that's just the mural projects, and then I raised money for a new program that we started called Murals on the Move, which is
Murals what?
Murals on the Move.
Oh, okay.
And it's a mobile, it's a van.
Okay.
But it's branded really cool, and it travels around to rec centers to provide mobile art programming. And so we raised some money to be able to make the Murals on the Move program exist, and
Okay.
it's wonderful. It comes with, so we provided some seasonal positions for artists, and they drive the van around and they go to different sites every day. And it's neat because it's for the kids in the after-school program, so they just come out, to the van, and the van brings the activities in, and they, give the kid a taste of what that's like. It's a great way for them to also be able to matriculate into some of Mural Arts' other programs if they're really interested. So it's sort of like an exposure program. It's been wonderful. We piloted it for 1 year. It was really successful. So now we're looking to see how we can continue the program. So we do work with them programmatically as well as with the mural projects. We're talking to them about doing a really large mural at the new Bridesburg Pool. We're talking to them about a project at West Mill Creek, and then I'm happy to invite Rebuild folks up to talk a little bit more about some of the conversations the Rebuild team has been having with Mural Arts. But I worked at Mural Arts, full disclosure, for 6 years, so I have a special place in my heart.
I think that's where we first met.
For the work that they do, and find that it really complements our work at Parks and Rec really well, so we love working with them.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking, though, is there a specific role for mural arts in Rebuild? And so right now, I think that Jane Golden is under the impression that there's not, that they have bid to be a part of different projects, but I think it just makes sense to include them in what we're doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, Nicole
Hi.
Westerman, Executive Director of Rebuild. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So we are in frequent communication with Mural Arts and with Jane. They are doing such great work across the city every day, and the work that they do in community engagement is a real model for the kinds of community engagement that we want for Rebuild. We're really proud that the project user projects so far have had the kinds of open and fair and transparent processes for getting community engagement and design teams in place that we envisioned for Rebuild and that are memorialized in the Rebuild Ordinance. So it is incumbent upon the project users to post those contract opportunities. I think you may know also we have a call for interest, so we have a directory of diverse nonprofits and MBEs and WBEs that are interested in community engagement opportunities as well as design and construction opportunities. Mural Arts is on that directory, so certainly expect them to be coming up in those processes. Very few executed contracts so far, because those grant agreements are just getting, we've only announced 2 executed agreements so far, so it's really too early to tell, but they are in the mix and would expect to keep seeing them in the mix.
Okay. So is there a way to have a more defined role for mural arts?
Well, again, we
Within Rebuild.
have been committed to an open and fair and transparent competitive process
I
for
understand that, but I
contracts.
guess what I'm thinking of is that they're a city agency. Like, David, I don't know if you had to weigh in on that, but if they're,
Sure.
they're a city agency, so it's kind of like public property or, any other department that you would naturally be connected to be able to get Rebuild done. It seems like mural arts should be thought of in that way.
Yeah, and David Gould, Deputy Director for Rebuild. As Catherine and Nicole both said, I think we all really value the work that Jane has done and that Mural Arts does, and we definitely see value in their participation in Rebuild.
Right.
I do know that my colleague Kira Strong has been speaking with Mural Arts about setting up a time to discuss a more defined role for them potentially. We also know that they have obviously murals on rec centers across Philadelphia, and many of which are rebuild sites, and we would imagine that it's a high likelihood that some additional sites that do not have murals could come away with murals as a result of a rebuild project. So that's something, we don't have it defined right now, but is definitely on our radar, and we're looking forward to having conversations with Mural Arts to further define that.
Okay, so you're going to have the conversation with Mural Arts and
Correct.
further define what their role as a city agency could be, should be during the rebuild process.
Correct.
Okay. All right, great. All right,
Great.
well, thank you very
Thank
much.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Oh, wait, I have one more question.
Okay.
Just for Kat, I know Catherine's like, oh my God. I'm sorry, like I don't see you all the time, I know. I saved everything up though, so.
I'm going to invite you out for drinks so we can just keep going.
Exactly, exactly. So listen, one last question, and that is, in 2016, we introduced and council passed legislation to make our playgrounds more accessible for older residents and those with disabilities. And can you just give me a very brief update on how that's being implemented? And I'm assuming that's a part of rebuild as well, that you know, we as a city have taken it really as a mandate to make sure that our playgrounds are welcoming to those with physical disabilities and as well as emotional disabilities and for older residents. So can you talk very briefly about that?
I'm going to let Aparna talk, but I want to tell you that it's going very well, and I actually think that it's received some national attention. So we've had other cities who have reached out about that.
Oh, good.
So yeah, I think it's been really, really successful. I'll let Aparna give you the details.
Councilwoman, since you introduced that legislation in 2016, we've been able to implement, as I mentioned earlier, 33 playgrounds that we can consider inclusive. That means people with not only physical disabilities, but also behavioral abilities of different capacities can participate in activities on the playground. There are different pieces of equipment that are made available to a variety of ages and abilities. Our staff has undergone several trainings. Annually, we do one or two at a minimum with different manufacturers, different entities that sort of bring to our attention new and innovative concepts around this. So what we try to do is not make it look separate in any way. So when you approach a playground, the idea is that everyone can participate at the same place. There's certain things that are done to accommodate, you know, whether in how equipment is spaced and the colors of the equipment, things like that. So we're very mindful of those. And actually, as a matter of practice, going forward, every playground that we build, those principles are applied.
Oh, good.
It doesn't, size does impact what you can do,
sure,
of course, but where we can, we do accommodate that, as well as adult fitness equipment to address the needs of aging populations in Philadelphia.
Excellent, excellent. And if we could, you know, just make sure, one of the things I noticed with a couple of playgrounds is as we put in equipment for those who may have a physical disability. Let's say if I have two children, one who's in a wheelchair and one who is not, I want to make sure that my child who uses a wheelchair has access to, you know, as much fun as possible there at our playground, rec center. I know that there are swings that can be accommodating and other things, other, you know, amenities that can be included that children, regardless of, you know, what the disability may be, can take advantage of. So I just really want to keep that in mind.
Yes, as do we. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Oh, wait, one more. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I believe that is all we have for today. I appreciate you and your team coming in, Commissioner. Thank you for your testimony. This will conclude our council hearing today. We will stand at recess, and this committee will stand at recess until 4:30 p.m. today for public testimony. Thank you.
Thank you.